Okay, so your cost per clicks skyrocketed overnight. You're freaking out. You're wondering what's going on, what to do about it. Let's talk about it. So, first off, I want to cover some fundamentals that I think will really provide some context into the subject and will help you get a clearer mind into how to evaluate and understand what's going on. So, first off, understand that Google Ads runs an auction every single time that it has ad space available, right? So display, search, shopping, etc. When it has a placement available, it's going to run an auction at the time of the search or the website visit, whatever it is. Your bid puts you in the auction, so the resulting cost per click in that auction is going to be your cost per click. Now that's really important. That the bid's going to put you in the auction, and the resulting cost per click in that auction is your cost per click. This is more important when it comes to automated bidding, but just in general. Now, per Google, the most you'll pay is what's minimally required to clear the quote ad rank thresholds and beat the ad rank of the competitor immediately below you, if there is any competitor there. Now, with automated bidding, Google is essentially predicting a conversion rate at the time of auction. So for every single auction, it's going to be predicting the conversion rates of somebody. Now, it's going to, with automated bidding or any light form of automated bidding like enhanced CPC, it's going to adjust your bid to help you essentially achieve whatever goal you've communicated to Google. So if that is maximizing clicks, then it's that. If it is to get as many conversions within a target return on ad spend or cost per acquisition, then it's going to try to do that. If it's just to get as many conversions within your daily budget as possible, it's going to do that. So obviously the big things there is what you have communicated to Google as your goal, what your conversion action, what that goal is, what event or what action rather is it that you've communicated to Google is what you want, as well as how much you've given within your daily budget, either in a shared budget or individually at the campaign level. So just to give you a quick example, using max conversions, if the click seems more likely to convert, so the person is going to take the action that you want, Google is going to increase the bid. If it seems less likely that that searcher is going to perform the action that you have communicated to Google that you want, it is going to lower the bid at the time of auction. Something like target cost per acquisition, Google's going to adjust the bids to try to get you as many conversions as possible within your daily budget and within that target cost per acquisition. So it is going to bid accordingly at the time of the auction. So all that is to say, if your cost per clicks skyrocket overnight, you should at least have some context as to what's going on at the individual auction level so you can start looking and digging into the data with all of that in mind. So it is likely that if you've seen this major skyrocket, and maybe it's 5 or 10 extra cost per clicks overnight, you've got some kind of automated bidding inside the account that is connected to that change. So for whatever reason, as we've discussed, Google is setting that bid because it felt it's going to result in the action that you have communicated that you want, either again more conversions or maximizing clicks or getting a certain amount of views in your cost per view, that kind of thing. Now, the usual suspects, this is really helpful usually when you're digging into, okay, you've identified maybe it's a certain campaign or ad group where the cost per clicks have skyrocketed. So usually the most common, I like to call them the usual suspects, it's going to be recent changes. This seems obvious, but often forgotten of things that you've done recently. So maybe this is like budget changes, bidding changes, whether automated or manual, targeting changes, that's keyword targets, audience targets, location targets, etc. Exclusions that you've made recently, whether that's negative keywords, exclusions for audiences or placements, site changes, right? Because your site affects your quality score, which impacts your cost per clicks. So those kind of things need to be taken into account as well. Sometimes those don't happen overnight. Those changes can happen slowly, and it's harder to monitor. Definitely install a quality score tracking script into your account so you can monitor these fluctuations to quality score over time in your account. Might be that the certain products or services that you're advertised have changed. That might also be impacting things. Google's going to make predictions to try to hit your goal depending on what you have given it to advertise. So this is another factor. Other settings that might have changed as well, whether that's like using automated auto-created assets, used to be called URL expansion and performance max, or maybe you're using URL exclusions, are also applicable. So definitely check on any kind of major recent changes, small and little actually, that have happened in the account. The second biggest factor in usual suspect is competitive changes, right? Because again, this is an ad auction. We're all competing for the same user. So in this case, it is one of two things: is either going to be an existing competitor that you're aware of, or just someone that's usually in the ad auctions with you here for this particular keyword or campaign or whatever it is. And they have decided to, for whatever reason, bid a little bit more aggressively. And this is in the case when cost per clicks are going up for you overnight and you're surprised by that. This could be that they're doing that for general testing and just trying to, maybe they're testing new automated bidding or different targets within that automated bid, or they're increasing their manual bids. It might be because they are running a promo or they're gearing up for a promo or of a holiday. Therefore, they are testing higher bids for those things or ramping up bids for those things. Now, it could also be that there's new competition that has entered the ad auction that you weren't aware of, and those guys entered the auction with much higher cost per clicks, or rather, they've entered with much higher bids, and all of a sudden that's created a bit of a shock in the system. This is something that you can look into the auction insights reports within your ad groups and campaigns to try to identify if there's someone new that is in those ad auctions that might have created that issue. Things to check. So I have a little mini checklist that I'll share with you guys. So this is not going to be all inclusive, but these are going to be like the major checks that you can get into. So one is going to be, first off, long-term trends. Anytime there's something that surprises you, make sure that it is truly an outlier, right? So make sure that it's surprising, like that it's not just surprising you because it's like a daily thing and you just happen to check on a Sunday and you don't usually check on Sundays, so you're not really keeping track of that, and it's not actually an outlier. So look at long-term trends, look at a longer date range, including months, including quarters, if that makes sense for your fiscal parts of the year, and see that really a cost per click on a given day going up is really a surprise or not. So really you need to establish those benchmarks and any kind of seasonality in the performance in your individual account to check for those things. And let's just say, okay, this is not normal for our account. We've established that. We looked at long-term trends and long-term date ranges. What do we do next? So really it's going to be digging into the data. This is kind of the really fun part for someone like myself, which is like to investigate areas within the account that have received clicks or otherwise, and also just look for major changes, right? Whether that's impressions, clicks, cost per views, cost per clicks, whatever is relevant within that campaign type or whatever you're seeing so far in the performance. Really just looking for like averages and volume metrics that sort of can allow you to kind of figure out patterns to things. And this is usually going to be in the campaigns, ad groups, keywords, search terms, product groups, those kind of things. You'll really be digging into those areas to see if there's any major jumps to things. You might find that there's more, all of a sudden there's a lot more long tail commercial intent search terms that you're all of a sudden showing for. It's not a bad thing, more than likely. So, those cost per clicks are likely to be higher, and therefore the automated bid has decided to bid more for that because it is predicting a really high conversion rate. This could be a good thing, and therefore that cost per click jump made a lot of sense actually to do that. And we'll talk about controlling this if that's not something you want it to do later. Another little underestimated tool actually is going to be the quote unquote explanations feature in Google Ads. I don't see enough people talking about this or using it much. And I understand to some degree why, especially if you're a professional, because usually you don't need something like this, but it can still be helpful if you're really scratching your head and maybe you just you're really new to the account. You don't have a lot of time to dig into the data. So essentially when you're comparing two date ranges and you're looking at either the campaigns report, like you're in the campaigns tab, or in the ad groups tab of a campaign, you can compare two date ranges as long as it's within 90 days and you're not including today's date. And you'll, in some cases, if there's enough data, if Google feels like there was a significant performance metrics change, you'll see these little there's a few different ways to see it. There's either blue with an dotted underline in a certain metric, like costs or clicks or conversions or impressions, and you can hover over that or click it, and an explanations tab will start populating, and it'll give you some explanations as to what might be going on and what might be causing that major change in performance. Can be very helpful, especially for new advertisers or less experienced advertisers, or again, if you're very new to the account, you just need to dig dig in, try to explain these things very quickly, can give you at least some rough estimates as to what might be going on. You can also look into if you're using if you have the graph shown, sometimes major fluctuations in performance will show up as little blips in the graph. And if you hover over them, there'll be a link that you can click to get the details, but it'll give you like a quick snippet as to what it thinks is going on. Lastly, you can also check for the explanations feature. You can look in the bid strategy report, less often used, but also in the bid strategy report, you can see these explanations for major changes of performance. Do note really quickly on explanations, they are currently only available for search campaigns using most bidding strategies, manual and automated, as well as app campaigns using target CPA and performance max campaigns. Thank goodness. So those are the big ones in terms of checks. Obviously, within all of that, you'll probably want to look at impression share data, and whether that's in a particular campaign in question. You're looking at the ad groups, the impression share changes, the product groups, the products, keywords, etc. Do dig into that and see if there's some impression share changes. So in other words, maybe you are now showing all of a sudden a lot more for an exact match keyword that usually has higher cost per clicks, and now all of a sudden you are getting you're showing in more often than not you're showing getting higher impression share for that keyword. Therefore, you're going to end up getting more clicks that tend to be higher cost per clicks. Just as an example, Auction Insights, definitely use this as well. These reports will give you an insight into some of those competitive things that we've talked about in terms of your ad auctions. So note that there isn't a compare date ranges toggle inside of Auction Insights. I really wish that there was, but you can do a couple things. Either you can, let's say it was yesterday that this major change in cost per clicks happened. You can just look at yesterday in the date range and then toggle. There's little arrows you can kind of click through and just look at individual days, like the day before and yesterday, like the day before yesterday and then yesterday, and then just to see if there's anything really obvious. Again, maybe new competitors that aren't usually there or major shifts to any kind of outranking share. Make sure to go through and evaluate the differences between those metrics to fully understand that report. We're not going to go into too much detail today, but just make sure that you're looking at that. Now, that's not the most ideal way. Ideally, I would like to download that information for a given date range that I want to investigate, whether that's 7, 30, 90, 180, 365, whatever it is, the date range you want to look at, and use a free tool to visualize the performance fluctuations over time in these Auction Insight reports. Really helpful. Optimizer has a free tool. It is called the Auction Insights Visualizer. I'll include a link in the post or in the description of the video so that you guys can utilize that. I use this all the time if I don't have a software that does this for me. So really useful. And again, totally free. Essentially just download the Auction Insights report for a given date range, upload the file in there, and you can then mess around with the graph and look and visualize different date ranges and different metrics from the Auction Insights reports to help evaluate some of those fluctuations. Very useful. Can't recommend it enough. So I think that's going to be it. Just do note that if you want to have more control within an automated bid strategy as to the maximum cost per click that happens inside of a given campaign that is using or ad group that is using automated bidding, if you want to give it a max cap, it's like I don't want to bid more than whatever it is, $50 per click or $20 per click. You can use a portfolio bidding strategy to set that limit. You can also do that on the other end. You can set a minimum threshold as to a minimum cost per click that you want to set. So essentially that'll control a little bit more and give you sort of like, give it some room. You don't want it to be too restrictive, but do give it some barriers and essentially say, I don't want to pay more than this and this per click. You don't have to set both. You can just set one or the other. And hopefully that was helpful for you guys, and we will see you in the next video.